The first thing the alien noticed was the lack of fear. Commander Yirlex of the Yirlex Dominion had studied thousands of predator-prey hierarchies across the galaxy. It had dissected the hunting patterns of the long-tongued Krellian lizards of Kovacs, cataloged the neural toxin dispersal of the Myrathi blue maws, and even survived an ambush by the infamous deep maw of Sector K-11. But none of that prepared it for the human. Not for the way the human looked directly into its eyes and said, "So you're the one in charge, huh? You got a name, or should I just call you Glowstick?" The human's voice was low, exhausted, but steady. His left arm hung at a strange angle, dislocated or fractured. Yirlex wasn't sure. Blood had dried on his temple, trailing down into his scruffy beard. His name was Oliver Trent. He had been pulled from the wreck of the downed survey shuttle 4 hours ago. The crash had killed the other 3 crew members. Oliver had survived by climbing out of the burning wreckage. No protective suit, no weapons, just a busted limb and a fire extinguisher he apparently used to beat off a scavenger beast the size of a small hover tank. "I am Commander Yirlex," the alien finally replied, voice modulated through the translator it wore as a collar. "You are not to be harmed. This is merely an observation station. You are our guest." Oliver tilted his head. "Observation, huh? That why there's a camera in the toilet? There's no camera in the Relax. I'm kidding, although now that I said it, I wouldn't be surprised." Yirlex turned away. It didn't blink. Its species didn't have eyelids, but something in the human's tone made it uneasy. It was not just the sarcasm. It was the casual defiance, the way Oliver seemed to treat his surroundings like an annoyance rather than a threat. The Yirlex had prepared for every known apex predator in the quadrant. Claws, venom, electromagnetic pulses, hive intelligence, none of it surprised them anymore. But humans weren't apex predators in the usual sense. They were problem solvers, survivors. And that made them infinitely harder to predict. "Why am I here?" Oliver asked. "You were recovered from a crash. Your species is of scientific interest to us. We have studied your biology, your culture, your war records. You are the first direct specimen we've been able to observe without interference. So, I'm a lab rat. We prefer the term subject." Oliver snorted. "Yeah, you would." He shifted in his seat. The sling they'd given him for his arm was basic, just elastic fabric and a few magnetic fasteners. The medics had scanned his shoulder, but hadn't yet determined if it was broken or merely dislocated. Yirlex had insisted on running a full diagnostic before attempting any corrective procedures. "Any chance I can get something for the pain?" Oliver asked. "You were administered a dose of Neurovex 30 minutes ago. It should be effective." "Then your drugs suck," Oliver muttered. "Or I'm just not wired like your average space iguana." Yirlex stared. The human's pain threshold was remarkable. Based on its medical scans, the injury was severe. Possibly a compound fracture. And yet the man still found energy for sarcasm. Oliver leaned forward, wincing. "Look, you don't need to play the whole 'we're only observing you' card. You're scared, I can see it. Not of me, maybe not yet, but you're worried. Otherwise, you would have let me bleed out." "We do not fear you," Yirlex said flatly. Oliver raised his eyebrows. "You sure? You had 3 armed guards posted outside my door while I slept, and I'm not even armed." "Unless you count the fire extinguisher, but I think you took that already. It is protocol. All unknown species are treated with caution." Oliver laughed once, harsh and dry. "Yeah, let me guess, you read our files, saw what we do to each other. Nukes, viruses, wars. You probably thought, oh, these things are savage, but you missed the point." "And what is the point, Oliver Trent? We don't survive because we're savage. We survive because we never stop adapting. You think we're scary now, wait till we start learning." Yirlex didn't respond. It didn't need to. The data feeds running through its neural uplink were already flagging anomalies in human behavior: emotional volatility, risk tolerance, the tendency to improvise in life-threatening situations. All of it made humans difficult to model. That night, Yirlex reviewed the footage from the crash site again. It watched Oliver crawl from the burning shuttle, dragging a broken arm, using shrapnel to cut through a jammed hatch. It watched him wrap a torn emergency blanket around his leg when the temperature dropped. It watched him pick up a rock and bash the skull of a predator that had stalked him while he tried to call for help. No training, no weapons, just instinct and grit. The next day, the tests began. Oliver lay flat on a scanning table while the Yirlex technicians swarmed around him, silent and focused. A low hum filled the room as the diagnostic array passed over his body. Yirlex stood nearby. "I'm not a fan of this," Oliver said. "Feels like I'm about to be microwaved. You are being scanned for internal damage. Your left humerus may be fractured. We must confirm before attempting reduction." "Could have told you that myself, Doc. It hurts like hell. You are not a medical expert." "Nope. Just the guy living in the body." Yirlex ignored him. The scan results appeared on its internal display. The bone was indeed fractured in 2 places, displaced but non-compound, a clean break but painful. Recovery with proper treatment would take at least 8 weeks. "We will initiate bone stabilization and begin regeneration therapy," Yirlex said. "You will require immobilization and monitored rest." "Great, so I'm stuck here." "For now." Oliver looked up at the ceiling. "Guess that's better than being dead." 2 days later, the alarms went off. Something had tripped the perimeter sensors outside the observation dome. At first, the Yirlex assumed it was a native predator. Then the feeds went dark. One by one, the cameras shut down. Something was coming through the forest. Fast, silent. Oliver was still confined to the med bay, his arm braced and immobilized. When the guards rushed past his door, he sat up. "What's going on?" he asked the technician monitoring his vitals. "I am not authorized to." Oliver grabbed the edge of the bed and pulled himself up, teeth clenched. "Save it. If something's coming, I'm not sitting here like a duck." "You are injured. I'm aware." He limped to the door, ignoring the technician's protests. The hall was empty. Echoes of movement came from the far end, interspersed with sharp commands in Yirlex tongue. Oliver moved carefully, favoring his good leg, and made his way toward the sound. When he reached the command center, he found Yirlex watching a static-filled screen. "What hit you?" Oliver asked. Yirlex didn't answer immediately. "We do not know. Our surveillance systems have been disabled." "This has never happened before." The lights flickered. Then the wall trembled. Oliver moved closer to the screen. "You said this place was secure." "It is. Not secure enough." Yirlex turned to him. "You should return to the med bay." "Not happening." Before Yirlex could object, the outer wall cracked. A jagged line appeared near the top, spreading quickly. Something slammed into it from the outside. Then again. A third time. Seconds later, the wall burst inward. A massive creature lunged through the breach, thick hide, armored limbs, eyes like molten glass. It let out a roar that shook the floor. Yirlex guards opened fire. Energy bolts lit the room, but the creature barely flinched. It swatted one guard aside like a toy. Yirlex backed away, accessing emergency protocols. Oliver didn't move. He stared at the thing, then at a crate near the wall. It had a red triangle on the side, flare rounds. He hobbled toward it. "What are you doing?" Yirlex shouted. "Improvising." He cracked the lid open, grabbed a flare launcher, and loaded it. The creature reared back, preparing to lunge again. "Hey, ugly," Oliver shouted. The creature turned. Oliver fired. The flare hit the thing square in the face and detonated in a burst of searing light. It shrieked, stumbling back, clawing at its own head. More guards moved in, unloading their weapons. This time the creature faltered. It turned and fled through the breach, crashing into the forest beyond. Silence returned. Oliver leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "Told you." "Adapt." Yirlex stared at him. "You are reckless, injured, unstable." "Yeah, and I just saved your life." Yirlex didn't reply. It didn't need to. The data feeds were already updating. New classification: human non-predatory apex anomaly, capable of high-risk solutions, unpredictable under duress. The Dominion had documented every predator across known space, but none of them set off this many red alerts. None of them had made the Yirlex panic. Oliver Trent, with a broken arm and a stolen flare gun, had. The creature didn't come back. By the 3rd hour, Yirlex command crews had sealed the breach and deployed a perimeter haze and airborne filament that disrupted organic tracking. It wasn't perfect, but it kept most native fauna guessing long enough for the engineers to reinforce the wall with an alloy barrier. Oliver sat on the floor near the med bay's auxiliary entrance, legs stretched out, his immobilized arm propped on a folded biosheet. A Vierksy physician hovered nearby, scanning the swelling on his shoulder with a wand that emitted a low-frequency pulse. "That's warm," Oliver muttered. "You cooking my bone back into place or just roasting me out of pity?" "You are undergoing deep tissue realignment," the Vierksy replied. "Thermal energy accelerates collagen restructuring. You will experience discomfort." "Good. Wouldn't want to get too cozy." The physician didn't respond. Its attention remained fixed on the readout. Oliver leaned his head back against the wall, exhaling through his nose. "You ever seen one of those things before?" The physician hesitated. "No. It does not match any known species on record." "Awesome." He stayed quiet after that, watching the soft ripple of light move across the ceiling as the dome's artificial sky adjusted to dusk. The Vierksy had built the base to mimic natural cycles, though their idea of twilight looked like a lava lamp stuck between colors. A faint clatter echoed from the corridor. Yirlex appeared a moment later, flanked by 2 sentries in reactive armor. Their visors pulsed cyan with ambient telemetry. Oliver looked up. "Glowstick, back already." Yirlex ignored the jab. "You will be relocated for the night. This wing is being restructured for security purposes." "Do I get room service?" "You will be given rations." "Same thing." He pushed himself up with his good hand. The shoulder brace tugged against his clavicle, sending a sharp jolt through his chest. He gritted his teeth but didn't make a sound. The physician made a note on its console but didn't intervene. Yirlex gestured toward the corridor. "Follow." Oliver limped after them, gait uneven but steady enough. They passed through a transit tunnel lined with embedded sensor arrays. Every 7 steps, a panel flickered amber and recalibrated for his biometrics. He counted them habit, maybe, or boredom. Either way, it kept his mind ahead of the pain. The new quarters were smaller. No windows. Just a platform bed, a console built into the wall, and a sink with a motion-activated tap that sputtered when he waved his hand under it. Yirlex waited by the door. "You will remain here until further notice." Oliver sat on the bed and looked at the wall console. "This one have games?" "It is locked to observation mode." "Figures." Yirlex didn't leave immediately. Instead, it shifted its weight subtle but noticeable. A hesitation. Oliver raised an eyebrow. "Something on your mind, Commander. You adapted to the threat before we identified it. Better than waiting to be eaten." There was no hesitation. "Your behavior was reactive, yet effective." "Yeah, well, survival's not a committee decision. You act or you're mulch." Yirlex tilted its head. "Is that typical of your species?" "No," Oliver said. "Some of us freeze, some run, some do something stupid and hope it works. And you, I improvise." Yirlex absorbed that in silence, then it departed without another word. 3 hours later, the door hissed open again. This time, it wasn't Vierksy personnel. The creature that entered was shorter than Yirlex, with iridescent skin that shimmered between violet and green depending on how it moved. It carried a shallow tray with a sealed pouch and a cup that steamed faintly. Oliver blinked. "You catering now?" The creature placed the tray on the console and made a series of warbling clicks. The translator collar lit up. Nutritional unit. Hydration supplement. Consume within optimal temperature range. That your way of saying dinner? Affirmative. Oliver picked up the pouch and sniffed at it. Smells like kelp and regret. The creature's throat sac pulsed once amusement maybe. Your species prefers high-sodium, low-nutrient meals. This has been modified for compatibility. He took a sip from the cup. It tasted like warm coriander and metal. Still, it beat chewing on emergency rations. "You got a name?" he asked. The creature tapped its throat. "Designation, Elcar." "Well, Elcar, thanks for the food." "Tell your bosses the hospitality's improving." Elcar didn't leave. It studied him for a moment, then gestured to the brace. "You continue to move the damaged limb despite risk of misalignment." Explanation: "Because I'm stubborn." "That is not a medical rationale." "No, but it's accurate." Elcar approached and extended a tendril-like finger toward the brace. Oliver tensed but let it inspect. "Pressure distribution is uneven," Elcar said. "This model is made for quadrilaterals." I wondered why it kept pinching my ribs. Elcar adjusted the straps, redistributing the weight. The relief was immediate and Oliver exhaled sharply. "Better," he said. "You are an inefficient organism," Elcar observed. "But you compensate with adaptive variance unmatched in our archives." Was that a compliment or an insult? Both. Elcar left without further ceremony. The next morning, Oliver woke to a dull ache in his side and the clatter of boots outside his door. No alarms, but tension hung in the air like static before a storm. A minute later, the door opened again. Yirlex entered alone. "You are requested in the central analytics chamber. Requested or ordered. Your presence is now considered operationally relevant." Oliver raised his eyebrows but didn't argue. Someone handed him a mobility brace for his leg, a rigid exosplint that locked around his knee. He strapped it on and stood, only swaying slightly. They led him through a different corridor this time. The walls here were darker, lined with fiber bundles that pulsed in soft rhythm. When they reached the chamber, he saw a cluster of Yirlex scientists around a holographic projection. The creature from the night before rotated slowly in the air, its anatomy dissected into layers. Veins, musculature, neural lattice all mapped in detail. "Didn't take you long to vivisect it in 3D, Oliver said. Yirlex gestured toward the image. "It is not organic in the traditional sense." Oliver narrowed his eyes. "Say that again." "It exhibits regenerative properties, but only under exposure to ambient radiation. Its tissue is semi-conductive, no digestive tract, no respiratory system." "It is not a native life form." "So what is it?" "We believe it was manufactured." Oliver stepped closer. The creature's skull was elongated with ridged plates where a brain might be, but beneath that, nothing matched any natural predator he'd ever seen. "Built by who?" "We are uncertain." "Then why show me?" Yirlex paused. "You responded to it effectively. Your assessment may yield overlooked patterns." Oliver studied the projections for a long moment, then he pointed to a section near the creature's lower spine. "There. That joint, it's not organic. That's a hinge, some kind of articulation point." Yirlex zoomed in. "Sure enough, the tissue ended in a composite seam. That's armor plating," Oliver said. "Flexible but reinforced." "Whoever made this, they didn't want it breaking down from wear and tear." Yirlex inclined its head. "Your inference aligns with our secondary hypothesis." Oliver crossed his arms. "You think someone sent it, or left it. This planet was once inhabited by a now extinct civilization. The creature may have been dormant beneath the surface. Until we crashed, or until you arrived." Oliver tapped the console. "You think it's linked to humans. We do not know what triggers its activation cycles, but your presence altered the environmental conditions, heat signatures. EM fields, it may have interpreted you as a target." "Lucky me." Yirlex turned to him. "Your insight has accelerated our analysis. You will remain part of the investigation." Oliver exhaled. "So I'm promoted from lab rat to junior detective." "Great, you will be assigned an assistant. Do I get a badge?" "No." Oliver glanced again at the creature's projection. A fragment of something he couldn't quite name stirred in the pit of his stomach. Wonder maybe, or dread. "This thing," he said quietly, "you're not scared of it." "You're scared of who made it." Yirlex didn't deny it, and that was answer enough. Oliver's knee brace hissed with every step, the exosplint adjusting automatically to his gait. He walked stiffly beside Elcar, who now trailed a small, hovering analysis drone. The drone emitted a soft chime every few seconds, its sensors sweeping the corridor in a spiral pattern. "This thing following me now." Oliver nodded toward it. "It is calibrated to your thermal and electromagnetic profile. It updates our internal systems with real-time metadata. Feels like I've got a devoted stalker. Charming. You emit inconsistent radiation signatures. That is not typical of species with internal temperature regulation. Tell that to the fever I had yesterday." "Pretty sure it wasn't inconsistent, just miserable." They reached the analytical subdeck, a low-ceilinged chamber lined with transparent panels that displayed layered data streams maps of the outlying terrain, pulse charts of nearby fauna, and internal schematics of the observation dome. 3 Yirlex engineers glanced up, but didn't speak. Oliver's presence had normalized just enough to be accepted, though not without lingering side eyes. He stepped to the central platform, which now displayed a three-dimensional reconstruction of the creature's flight path away from the dome. A streak of orange arced into the western forest before fading out. "Your flare disrupted its navigation," said Elcar. "It retreated along a route with the lowest magnetic interference. And it led us to something buried." Oliver looked over. "A structure," Elcar continued. "Beneath the canopy, approximately 70 kilometers west, it predates our arrival by centuries, possibly millennia. I thought this planet was declared uninhabited, unoccupied, not uninhabited. There is a difference." Oliver leaned closer to the projection. "You think that's where it came from?" It emerged from that direction. "We believe it was stored there, possibly dormant for an extended period. And you're planning to go poking around. Our excavation team already has." Elcar pressed a control node on its harness. The image shifted, revealing what looked like a partially collapsed vault. Dark metal, half fused with the soil, the opening was jagged, sheared open by force rather than decay. Inside, structural beams formed a tight corridor that sloped downward. "Lovely," Oliver muttered. "Looks like a place you'd lose a bet and your life." The corridor leads to a chamber with a containment array. The mechanism used to house the creature is no longer active. Oliver crossed his arms. "And you're telling me this because you are familiar with unstable systems. Your reaction to the entity's behavior was more effective than ours. We want your input." He laughed once. "You dragged me out of bed and across half your base because I'm good at chaos. You navigate unpredictability with a higher than expected success rate. Doesn't mean I enjoy it. That was never implied." Oliver stared at the vault schematic. "You want me to go in?" "No. We want your interpretation. You are not physically suited for the descent." "Flattering." Elcar tapped another node. A second projection appeared, an interior scan of the vault chamber. The walls were built from a honeycomb alloy, each cell containing a different object. Most were corroded, some shattered, but one remained intact, a long cylinder, suspended midair by magnetic anchors still humming faintly. "That," said Elcar, "contains another specimen." Oliver leaned forward. "Still alive, unclear. The containment field is active, but there is no visible movement within. What happens if it wakes up? We are attempting to determine that. Your assistance may accelerate our understanding." He studied the cylinder's dimensions. "This one's smaller." "Yes, still dangerous. We are not assuming otherwise." Oliver rubbed his jaw. "If I say something helpful, do I get breakfast with flavor tomorrow?" "Possibly." He pointed at the edges of the containment field. "Those bands, they're not evenly distributed." "That's not a power failure, that's where. It's been cycling for too long, probably running on a long decay energy loop." Conclusion: if it's alive, it's been kept in a kind of sensory drip, enough to keep it semi-aware but not enough to wake it. Which means someone expected it to wake up eventually. Elcar's throat sac fluttered slightly. "That aligns with our secondary hypothesis." Oliver stepped away from the projection. "You're sitting on a time bomb. If that thing wakes up like the last one, your dome won't hold." Elcar turned to one of the engineers and exchanged a short, warbled code. Then it faced Oliver again. "You will brief our upper analysts in 2 hours. Great. Should I wear something formal, or will my broken arm and limp do?" Elcar didn't answer. It simply gestured toward the exit. The drone followed as Oliver left. Later that day, he sat in a circular chamber with 6 Yirlex analysts arranged around him at different elevations. The room was designed for neurosensory data exchange, but the translators allowed for spoken communication. The air had a faint metallic tang, like ozone after a lightning strike. One of the analysts, taller than the rest, and marked by a band of pale blue along its cranial ridge, addressed him first. "You comprehend containment theory from a non-technical background. I understand what happens when things break out of boxes. Your species' survival metrics suggest high exposure to catastrophic failure." "Yeah," said Oliver. "We're good at cleaning up messes we didn't plan for. Our own projections indicated the specimen would remain dormant. Your projections didn't account for human error or human presence. There is no record of your species encountering this technology before. Doesn't mean we didn't trigger it. Maybe we lit up the right electromagnetic frequency, or maybe it just smelled blood. Another analyst leaned forward, speaking more slowly. Your injury occurred 27 hours before the attack. Could your biological distress have been the catalyst? Oliver frowned. You think it got excited because I was hurt. Pain releases chemicals. Your species emits cortisol, endorphins, and heat signatures under duress. These may have functioned as signals. He nodded slowly. So I was basically a dinner bell. They didn't correct him. The lead analyst spoke again. We request your direct participation in assessing the second containment device. Oliver's eyes narrowed. You just said I'm not physically suited to enter. You will not enter. You will guide a remote probe. It will mirror your decision patterns in real time. So I'm the puppet master now. Correct. He shifted in his seat. You're really this desperate. We are thorough. 2 hours later, Oliver sat in a control chair, one hand strapped into a neural glove, the other resting in a cradle that tracked his micro-movements. A visor lowered over his eyes, showing him a live feed from the probe now descending into the vault. Signals clean, said one of the engineers behind him. You may begin. Oliver guided the probe forward. It hovered smoothly down the corridor, past the collapsed segments and into the main vault. The air inside shimmered slightly residual heat or a low-level radiation leak. When the probe reached the containment cylinder, Oliver slowed it and rotated around the object. Same design as the first, he murmured. But this one's got a weird pulse. Clarify, said an engineer. It's breathing, not literally, but the field's pulsing like it's sinking to something. He brought the probe closer to the cylinder's surface. The field flickered once, then a ripple. The cylinder trembled. Oliver jerked his hand back. Disengage, now. The probe shot backward. The field stabilized again. Did you see that? We did. Oliver pulled off the visor. His face was pale. It reacted to me. The analysts conferred briefly, switching to their native tongue. Then one of them turned back. Your interaction confirms our suspicion. These entities are responsive to human stimuli. You mean they're designed to notice us? Yes, possibly for pursuit, possibly for containment. We are still uncertain. Oliver stood up. Whatever they are, you've got to shut that vault. You're playing with something that doesn't care about your protocols. We will initiate a seal. And then what? We will abandon the site. He blinked. You're leaving. We believe this installation has served its purpose. The data collected from your responses has exceeded our projections. So I get to limp away and pretend this never happened. You will be returned to your people. Your recommendations will be included in our final report. Oliver looked around the chamber, then back at the analysts. You're scared, you won't admit it, but you're terrified. That is not relevant. It is to me. They didn't reply. 3 days later, a transport unit touched down in a cleared zone just outside the dome's perimeter. Oliver stepped aboard, his legs still braced, shoulders strapped, a sealed data tablet in his bag, his only record of the encounter. The dome behind him had already begun folding inward, disassembling itself sector by sector. Yirlex stood at the base of the boarding ramp. You are being returned with full medical clearance. Your injuries will heal. Oliver nodded. Physically sure, Yirlex hesitated. Your species is more effective than anticipated. Yeah, Oliver said. We have a habit of surviving things that should kill us. He stepped inside the vessel. The hatch sealed shut behind him.